Welcome to a special edition of Facing the Nation for May 10th, 2025. It is always my honor and privilege to have you joining this program as we have so many things to discuss. But before I proceed with our usual setting, I want to take this time to express my condolences to the family and friends and comrades of Miss Amna Ali, who is a former General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform and a former Minister of Government parliamentarian, someone who has given much of her time and life to the people of this country in different forms and in different positions in this country. So I want to extend my condolences to her immediate family, friends, and loved ones. Okay, so today's program, as you would have noticed, we are going to be talking about the police, the government, and what has been happening during what I will describe as the trying times we are currently facing. And as I usually start the program by saying, now it's time for you to call up a neighbor, call up a friend, let them know that Facing the Nation is on. Share the platform, share it. You can find us, of course, on the APNU AFC page on Facebook, the People's National Congress Reform page on Facebook, APNU on the YouTube channel. Just share the live as we have a serious discussion to put in here today. And my guest being no stranger to this platform, no stranger to this program. And it is always a privilege to hear him break things down and, bring the necessary clarity that we need in this situation. My guest today is none other than Mr. Paul Slow, retired Assistant Commissioner, Chairman of the Police Service Commission, host of Outspoken, and someone that is no stranger to the Guyanese people, and no stranger to many of us who have been following all the things that are currently happening in our country. Mr. Paul Slow.
Good afternoon, Ms. Haynes. Good afternoon, and to your viewers, listeners. I want to, in the beginning, join you in expressing condolences to the relatives, friends, associates of the late Amna Ali. I was saddened this morning when I learned of her passing. So it's good to be on the program with you this afternoon.
All right. As you know, when we start our conversation, there is so much happening, and we have this limited time to break down the things that we want to talk about. So I want to go straight off the bat. What we are looking at, and the major thing that has been in the homes of all Guyanese, whether home or abroad, and generally a lot of people looking in on the country, the situation which surround the murder, homicide, disappearance, and of Adriana Young, which has become something that we're currently still going through as a nation. And, we're looking for the answers, we're looking for an outcome, we're looking for answer, and to see justice is served in this situation. I know you would have on your program, and of course, you were on Nation Watch as well Sunday, and you talked a lot about some of the procedures that should have been taken when this young lady was reported missing on the day. And I want us to start a little with that and, to come to a lot of the new things that have unfolded since that program as well, and the things that we can talk about. But one of the things that I want us to start with, we know Adriana was reported missing by her relatives. We know that a search was conducted at the moment at the pool, in the environs. And the family went further to do a little bit of their own investigation, where they were able to view footage from a home across the road from the hotel. And it was that caused them to believe that Adriana never left the hotel and she was in there. That, of course, was reported to the police. Let's talk about what should happen after that kind of information is provided to the police. This young lady reported missing around 1:30, 2 o'clock. You went there, the people said they searched the pool, they did whatever, and the relatives say to you, we have seen footage. She did not leave this premises. What should have been done?
Well, again, thank you for the question. Very good question. Let me say this, because in the beginning, you have lots of commentators. They are injecting all type of speculations, and they're doing all kind of things to muddy the waters. Now, as you indicated, this child went to this location, Doubleday Hotel, with her grandmother to swim. Shortly thereafter, she was discovered missing. The reports are they made an initial search and they did not locate her. So they went to the police station. I think it might have been Tushan police station. Now, let me say this off the bat, because some people, including the police, they want us to believe that there's a protocol where when a report is made of a person who is missing, 24 hours should elapse before you take any serious action. And I have said on previous programs, and I'm repeating here for the education of our viewers, this report was not the normal missing person report. A normal missing person report, someone will go to the station and say John Joseph, Mary Smith is missing. Questions are going to be asked. When last you seen them? I didn't even describe. Well, they left home to go to work. They never came back. They left to go to the market and they never came back. We don't know where they are. That's typically a normal missing person report. This report was not a typical missing person report. This is a report where the grandmother or whoever was making a report that we went to swim, and shortly thereafter, this child was missing from a particular location. Let me understand this. She was at Doubleday and she missing from Doubleday. And I think they further indicated that they were of the view that she was still at the location. So you can't tell anyone about 24 hours elapsing before you take any action. Proper police action would have dictated that an occurrence, what we call an occurrence, a record would have been made of this missing person report, right? Efforts should have been made immediately to go to the location to conduct a search. And I want to be fair to the police, because if you're making a report to any police station, including the Tushan police station, I don't believe they would have had the resources at hand immediately to conduct a proper search. But certainly, there should have been a response by the police to that particular location, right? Now, what would have happened then, or what should have happened, very almost at the same time, this should have been kicked up to at the command level. Look, we have a report of a child missing. The child was at the hotel swimming, and the child is missing from the hotel. The grandmother is reporting that. Therefore, they're saying they still believe that this child is still at this location. At that stage, at the command level of the division, whether it's a subdivisional command or the divisional command, after then
Mhm.
to mobilize resources to go to this location conduct to conduct another search where you're going there to start an investigation, which includes a search.
Mhm.
You're going to be
Mhm.
conducting an investigation. So people are going to
Mhm.
go there. And from the time you get there, the first part of the investigation, or when you're investigating stuff, you don't rule out anything. You're not gonna rule out that the child might be found someplace alive. You're not gonna rule out that the child might have you're not ruling out anything. So therefore, all the people in that location, every single one, whether you're a guest, whether you're a visitor, whether you're a worker, whatever you are, all of the people have to be suspect in this matter. And you have to make sure that you question. You start a process of questioning all of them.
Mhm.
Real, because if the child went missing in the hotel, chances are people there would have seen her. Did you see this child description
Mhm. Mhm.
in a particular location? And you may not start out with the intention that it is a homicide you're investigating, but those preliminary steps have to be done. You
Mhm.
go there, you conduct, no one should be allowed to leave as you conduct your search, because not because only you might have them as suspects, but because they might have witnessed something which might have led to the discovery of this child. So that is the initial action that should have been taken. Initial police action is seen, and that would have been Wednesday afternoon. Now,
Correct.
once time prolonged, and you recognize that, hey, this child is still not recovered, then you have to up the ante. You have to now decide that maybe some foul play is suspected, and you bring in perhaps the more experienced people to say that you're going to investigate. You have to decide now you are going to do a comprehensive search of the location, including most naturally you would have started with the pool and the public areas,
Mhm.
bathrooms. That is where you would have started. In the meanwhile, it's simultaneous activities. So while you are searching, your detectives or whoever are questioning people there, see if you can narrow down the search. Because someone might have said to you, well, I saw her at such a time going into the bathroom, or I saw
Mhm.
her going up a stairs. So that narrows down where you have to search, because you're searching a hotel with many, many rooms, with many,
Mhm.
many visitors. So you have to think and organize to do that. Clearly, this was not done. This was
Mhm.
not done. And then what led, in my view, and the general feeling, what led to the problem is that the police then said to the father and others who were there, we saw footage, we saw CCTV footage, which showed this girl went into a specific car. They gave the color, they gave the license plate, heading in a particular direction towards Vidinu, right? People say that was a red herring. Where did they get this information? Later on, they said that, well, it was misinformation from the command center and all that. But even at that time, the family
Mhm.
was saying, look, they have a camera, a neighbor's camera, that showed this child entering the facility, and the child never left the facility. You're getting suspicious,
Mhm.
more suspicious
Correct.
of foul play. Further, further, you go there and they're asking the hotel owners or the operators to see the CCTV footage, and they're telling you that the cameras are not working. What? Right away, any police, any real police, I must say, will become extremely suspicious.
Suspicion.
You have a facility of that nature, cameras are not
Mhm.
working. The neighbor camera showed that the child went in there with her grandparents and never left. And,
Mhm.
and you're not going to get suspicious and decide, well, maybe foul play is afoot. And therefore, we have to make sure all the resources are brought to bear to make sure that this matter is resolved very speedily. Because in these cases, people say delay can be dangerous. The longer you take to do a comprehensive search, because look, in retrospect, that child might very well have been alive when the police arrived there. And if you had
Mhm.
done a comprehensive search then, or if you had mobilized to do a comprehensive search,
Mhm.
maybe the child would have been alive. But nothing proper was done. And what is more disappointing, and I have said this before, is the fact that the most senior police officer in the division, Assistant Commissioner Mandal, was on the
Mhm.
scene very, very early, from as early from the
Mhm.
report as early as Wednesday night when this child went
Correct.
missing, and could not take proper action, could not organize to make sure proper policing work was done. That is very, very disappointing. Well, I'm not disappointed in that. Uh, some people are surprised because I know the characters, and I've been saying all along that these people are pitchfork into these positions without any training, without any skill, without any knowledge. And this was evident in this case. Lack
Mhm.
of proper policing action from the most senior man in the division from the get-go. And this is what led to the escalation, because then come to Thursday morning, even before the child miraculously appeared, they came again with a falsehood. Oh, this child is seen at some bus stop, entering some bus.
Correct.
Some, so all of these things, and then
Mhm.
they're spinning it now to say misinformation and no proper communication. This thing is terrible. This is terrible. And this particular matter should not be viewed in isolation. We have had several incidents, Blinden, other places where police
Correct.
are found to be giving false information, deliberately
Mhm.
giving false information. They have no
Mhm.
credibility, and that is the problem. So people started to speculate. Call the father, and the father maintained. And look, I have to compliment, even when I sympathize with him for the loss of his daughter, I have to compliment him for the stand he took. He remained there. He
Mhm.
remained there because he was convinced that his child was in that hotel. He and others remained there, even when the police were trying to persuade them
To leave.
to leave. They decided
Mhm.
no, they are not going to leave. And let me say this. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that the police saw something which gave them the feeling, or they came to the conclusion that this child has left the hotel in this car that they described. The father wants, why are you trying to get them to move from there? You should
Mhm.
then, you the police, should then go to try to intercept and locate this car. So if they want to remain there, let them remain there. If you are so
But
convinced,
you do work.
car, find the girl,
Mhm.
bring her back to the location. But no, they did not do that. They wanted the child, the parents, and all those people there to leave, and that is what gives rise to collusion. That is what gives rise to, as I say, maybe even accessory after the fact. Because if they knew
Mhm.
that something
Mhm.
wrong had happened to this child, and they were trying to get these people away so they can dispose of the body, then they are
Mhm.
accessory after
To
the fact.
murder.
And
Mhm.
so it's and that is what took, it's really, really sad. It's really sad to see the type of action or lack of action taken by the
Mhm.
police at that initial stage of this matter.
What I want to bring in here, you just explain a lot about was expected of the police and what we saw contrary to what was expected to them, and the situation that gives rise to public distrust, mainly in this part of the police. But I want us to bring now into context, because even in the earliest stage, people are saying, oh, some people who wants to cover for the government, they're saying, oh, this was all the police and the police didn't do what they were supposed to do, and the government has nothing to do with it. But I want to bring in the same context during the same period. On the morning after, which was the Thursday morning, long before the body was discovered, we had a minister of government who appeared on scene, and she shared with us that she was in contact with the Minister of Home Affairs, and that she had officers on ground since the day before. So it tells us that they were aware of the situation and they were being informed of what was happening at the ministerial level. And it was only on that morning she came to say that she is now requesting sniffer dogs or the dogs from the, I believe it may be the K9 unit, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to come in because they knew they had the clothing of the young lady there. All her clothes that she came with was left there at the pool, and they could have now used that to maybe make a search. Now, she would have therefore indicated that the government was aware at the ministerial level of what is happening, and they would now make an intervention. And I dare to say, in some sense, I believe this also is what led to the discovery of the child after hearing that the minister is now saying she's talking to the Home Affairs Minister, she talked to the president, and sniffer dogs are coming. But let's talk about what then if the minister and government officials at that level had information of this situation since the night before, as she would have stated on live TV to the population and the persons out there, while you still had riot gear police out there. Where did the government in this context err?
Well, let me say this. Thanks to the question and the summary that you gave. And the first, I want to start by asking a question. What was the minister doing there? Right? And they're the ones who want to tell you about this matter being politicized. Right? Again, I say this is a police matter. A police matter. And one would have expected the police commander with the rank of assistant commissioner, the third most senior rank in the police force, should have been able to take command and control of that situation. He did not. So the minister turned up. Once a minister of government turned up, the thing becomes politicized. So despite what they are now trying to say, they are the ones who went down on the scene very early. So it can be argued that they are the ones who sought to politicize this issue. So here it is now, the minister is there, and the minister is telling people how she spoke to the Minister of Home Affairs and what the ministers have to do with that. The person who should take command would be the commissioner of police, the crime chief, and all those persons. And if they want assistance from government, which should not be in the first place, then they have to escalate it. But not the minister telling people that, oh, I've spoken to the Minister of Home Affairs, my colleague minister, and they are going to send tracker dogs and all of that. It's not the work of the minister. That is not the work of the minister. That should have been the work of, in the first instance, the divisional commander and the officers in the division. That's the type of, I was speaking earlier, when I said earlier that the necessary resources might not have been available in the division. No division can have all the resources. But if you have proper command, then you escalate and you get resources from elsewhere. But in this case, minister jumped in Thursday, and the minister is there. And that is the type of political interference we have been talking about. That is the type of thing that leads to all kind of chaos and confusion because they are intervening when they ought not to intervene. I don't care what they say. Proper policing and proper command structure and so on, the minister had no, even if, let me say, you come as a politician, you know, especially this election year, they want to come to give the impression that they're doing something, right? But then the minister, according to the reports, is telling them she can talk to Home Affairs and take an arrangement for that to come. That's ministerial work. Those are operational matters, and the minister has no role in operational matters in the force. That minister, any other minister, including the president, but that is what we have, the type of political control. And when you point it out, when you talk about it, they say all kind of things. They say all kind of things. But that is a classic example of political intervention when they ought not to have been.
I agree 100. And like you pointed out, if anybody had begun to make this situation political, it would have been the government, by all means, that would have started to make it political. Now, we had the discovery of the body about 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, given the timing that we would have seen stuff unfolding online. But something that was notable at the time was that there was now a very large presence of police on the scene, not just on the outside of the building, but on the inside of the building. And what is of great concern to me, and I believe to many of the persons who would have looked on that day, whether in person or through the live feeds, is that we saw policemen in the building at the time this body, in my view, miraculously appeared in this pool. And we have not heard from the police anybody being held altogether. And I'm not even going to talk as yet about, we talking about the owners being held, the workers being called in for questioning, but police officers on scene during the time, where did they take a statement from them how this body, they just saw it in the pool, what happened, what was happening around the area at the time? Would that be something that you believe in proper policing should be done
Well,
to
that
question
is
those
critical.
officers?
That is critical. You went there on Wednesday night, Wednesday the 23rd of April. Maybe you're dealing with a missing person. Um, Maybe you suspect foul play, but there's no confirmation of foul play at that stage. As I've indicated, proper policing would have dictated that you put certain measures in place. That place should have been cordoned from the very night. Proper police presence to ensure no one leaves, and you start your investigation to make sure you get names and statements from all the persons who are there, right? That wasn't done. The morning, as you rightly pointed out, lots of policemen on the ground. They're just milling around, milling around. Commander on two phones, confused, apparently don't know which one to answer. The evidence is there, milling around. No attempt to establish a cordon. No attempt to say, well, look, you can't come beyond this point, even though at some stage they had lots of people. I saw an old busload of people in Keiki arriving there sometime during the course of the morning. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
it's before the body was found or after. A whole busload of people in Keiki clothes. And then let's move forward to when some alarm was made that his body was found in the pool. No attempt even at that stage to make sure, and the father jumped into the pool and removed the child. You can't blame the father, even though that might not have been the correct action, because he would have wanted photographs taken and all of that. Because at that stage, it was obvious that the child was dead. But the father, you can't blame him. He went in there, he saw his daughter floating, he pulled her out. Now at that stage, the police have to ensure that that area is properly cordoned off, where she is lying at the side of the pool. No one should be there to contaminate that. And you go, the body should never have been removed from that location until it was properly photographed, until you call a doctor or somebody to come, preferably the pathologist, to come to do some initial examination. Look, I have been a police commander for years. I commanded the same division, used to be the division then. I commanded Georgetown, the largest division they have by population. I commanded Berbice, East and West Berbice at the time. And I have other command. I remember once, it was a Saturday morning too. We got a report that a man was missing. He came back from Canada or somewhere. I can't remember when. He came on holiday. He was seen at a place in Main Street, at a hotel in Main Street with a bar below, having some drinks and so on in company with people. Then we got evidence that he left on his way, boarded some public transportation to go home. And there was a suspicion that foul play might have been involved, right? Then it rained heavily. I remember that time it rained heavily. An alarm was raised that he was seen in a canal just east of the police station there at Lenora, right? Saturday morning. We went out there. I, as commander, went there. The crime chief at the time, we came because I alerted. What we do is secure the body. We kept the body there. The reason why the body was seen because it was a shallow trench, and you can see the body. The water was then flowing out, so we had to secure the body. We sent for Dr. Leslie Mutu, who was a pathologist, and the photographers. We took the photographs there, and then Mutu came. Mutu did a preliminary examination at the site where the body was found. That is how it is done. And then after, we summoned the funeral parlor to come to take the body and for a postmortem examination to be done at some time, right? I think that was arranged on Monday. When the postmortem examination was done, it was discovered that the man died from drowning. So when we pieced the pieces together, he came, he wasn't too certain about the place. He came off, drunk, in a drunken state, he fell overboard. And he drunk. But the point I'm making, the body ought to remain there. Because for example, you're hearing now about cottonwool in the nostril. Now, photographs, the people who were investigating would have taken photographs of the body there and then. And if cottonwool was seen, they would have certainly taken a close-up and all of that. But nothing was done. That place was never preserved. People walking up the step at the hotel, and it is now alleged that maybe they're the ones who started the fire. All because of the failing of the police, and they cannot escape that. Even they themselves had admitted. I think the Prime Minister the other day talked about missteps. There are no missteps. There are no missteps. It's many of the things. It's clear dereliction. They have no question for that. Because as I said, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in the initial report Wednesday afternoon. But they have enough time by Thursday morning to make sure that they put systems in place, right, to keep that area secured. I saw Thursday morning 2 Caucasian men with suitcases trying to leave the premises. And it's just people, the civilian, they're going to call them protesters, they're going to call them terrorists, they're going to call them whatever they want to call them. It's those persons out there have to say, look, y'all are leaving. You're not leaving until this child is found, because they too would have been suspects. Police are doing that. I saw a vehicle trying. Same thing. The people stopped the vehicle from leaving. That should have been basic policing work. Nothing. No one should leave. Right. This has to be considered now an active crime scene, and no one should be allowed to leave. Records. By then, that time, people should have been there taking statements from every single person who was there. They all should have been held as suspects, because you can't rule out. That is not the way you investigate. You investigate through a process of elimination. So you're there, you question the people, you question, and all of that. But this is a sad piece. And I am saying this, part of the escalation or the deterioration that they are lamenting now is as a result of the according to them, they say missteps. Is according to the incompetence of the police. Your missteps is in clear
or deliberate actions or
deliberate collusion. That is what has happened. So you have to call a spade a spade. You have to call a spade a spade. And when you come out to say, well, there was false information, some word like that, given or something like that. Who gave it? What process you have? You're gonna tell me somebody in an operations center gives information. What happened to the chain of command in that center? Nobody's going to check to make sure it's the correct date. Nobody's going to check, and the commander is going to release it just like that. Even the president, because the president on the night of the 28th, when they had the postmortem, says that the postmortem examination says no forcible signs of now, all kind of thing they're saying, and they are the ones who are causing this thing to escalate because of all the lies they're telling. And I ain't gonna use no euphemism. It's lies they're telling. I am not gonna be diplomatic. They are telling deliberate. Well, police used to say there's a charge in the police. This is gonna call deliberate falsehood. If you tell them, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing, and they come in and they gaslighting and all of this. And then when people are upset, then the people who are upset are terrorists, and they're not examining further to say they are the ones who caused. Because again, I say. This whole thing, and I don't think it can be disputed now, is that the action of the police, the action or inaction of the police that really caused this thing to spiral out of control.
Mhm. I want us to move forward because I want us to be able to talk about some of the things that are now currently happening. So we had the Monday following the discovery of Adriana Young's body. We had that autopsy being done. We were told, of course, you had someone coming from the UK, someone coming from Barbados, and a person from the US that the family would have agreed to be a part of this. And what we saw, and I can say this firsthand because I spent basically the entire day in front of Georgetown Hospital. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that there was no disturbance being caused. There was one incident throughout that day where a security guard would have assaulted a woman from one of these NGOs who said that her NGO had permission to be a part of the whatever the stuff that was happening, to be present. And that security guard decided, for whatever reason, that she can't pass. He choked her, and persons were there. I believe, I think it was her son as well, was there. And there was a bit of a tumble, or I should say, the security guard assaulted the woman that caused a little reaction from the crowd. Now, there were senior officers on ground who, for whatever reason, didn't, at least when I got there earlier, the crowd wasn't heavy. It was just a few persons across the road, and it was manageable. As the day proceeded, the crowd got larger. Maybe they should have cordoned it off a bit more or whatever. But generally, people were there simply supporting, no rocket, no nothing. And I can tell you this for a fact, that when the TSU van landed on Middle Street, just as shocked everybody who was out there was, so were the officers that were in charge at that time. They were just as shocked as the people, to the point, I'm sure you went through the procedures that should have been taken before you decided in your mind that in front of a hospital that you should be shooting up like you're heading good. You had senior officers and blue clothes officers who were sent to make sure everything was okay, running from bullets. That was the image. You had senior officers in brown clothes and officers in blue clothes running from their fellow officers in TSU gear who decided that they would shoot and carry on as they want. I don't know if you're going to make a little comment on it, but I want to push forward because there are two things that I really want us to discuss before we run out of time. After all of that happened, it obviously ignited something in the nation because it seemed deliberate by the hierarchies at this point that they wanted to create an issue. Because if your senior officers, your commander, nobody know that TSU was coming. This happened. People started getting shot left, right, and center. The police murdered a young man on Camp Street, and this escalated. You had that. And now the nation is looking every day at persons who are, some who are engaging in looting because of what would have been triggered by the Guyana Police Force and government, and some who had nothing to do with what was happening and no evidence can be brought forward. You have hundreds of persons being charged in some form of with terrorism. I want you to explain to us, how does that sit and how does it look, not just for a nation, but looking from the international perspective? A country is just listing hundreds of persons as terrorists in their country. What is your thought on that, and what How do you deem that? Is that justifiable? Is that the charge we should be seeing? We now see that this young lady who had a private conversation that was leaked has been charged with terrorism and inciting and remanded to prison. Let's talk about that.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, a lot to unpack. Let
Mm-hmm.
me start on the 28th of April there at the hospital. Now, first, if you might recall, the postmortem was to be done, I think was the Friday before, right? She
Mm-hmm.
was discovered on the 24th, Thursday the 24th. Initially, we heard that the postmortem was to be done on the Friday, and then we heard somebody from Barbados was coming, and
Mm-hmm.
it was put off for Monday because they had to get these other pathologists and so on. So the police knew. I got a call early that Monday morning, Monday the 28th of April, from a friend who was passing the area at the Balwansing Hospital. He saw lots of police and wanted to know what was going on. So then
Mm-hmm.
we figure out that how we learned that the body of the child was to be taken there to be x-rayed, right? So the police knew that you're going to have an operation there, and they turned out there. That would have been incident-free. The body was then moved to the Georgetown Hospital mortuary where the postmortem was expected to be done. It was then reported on social media that the postmortem would start something around 12:30 to 1 o'clock, and it was likely to take about 3 or 4 hours. I'm saying all of this to say you had enough time to make proper preparation. This is not
Mm-hmm.
something that was sprung on you suddenly. You had enough time to make proper preparation. It was clear that that wasn't done. And you know, in these age, the telecommunication age, where we had people there video recording, people from the
Mm-hmm.
news outlets video recording, so we could have followed what was going on. Very early, the security guard at the hospital, the gate there in the middle street, sought to prevent people, some of the journalists, from entering.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Correct.
said that the instruction that they got was only the state operatives, the state media people should be allowed to enter. I heard that. They said that,
Yes.
right? All
Mm-hmm.
right. Then I think some official from the hospital had to come out and clarify
CEO.
that. He said those
Mm-hmm.
instructions were never given and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm saying you have time to put systems in place. At no stage did I see the police attempting to take control, even though under normal circumstances, the hospital security would be in charge of that gate. I would have thought that given what was going on, that police would have
Mm-hmm.
had a presence there too, right? That
Mm-hmm.
did not happen. So the crowd build up. And let me understand this. I did training in crowd psychology. I taught policemen crowd psychology. And crowd psychology will normally tell you how a crowd builds up. Huh? You get people who are have a concern, who are interested, the family and all those people. Then you're gonna have curious onlookers. In Ghana, we say them people who fast. They pass in there, they see a crowd, they stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And crowd psychology would have informed them that when you wanted to get to, if you wanted to remove those people, if you're gonna warn them and tell them, say, look, you have to remove those curious onlookers would go away because they don't want any trouble. They just pass and they see a line or see a crowd and they just stop to gossip and all of that. None of that was done. And therefore the compound became filled with curious onlookers. Most of them were curious. As you said, people who fast, they just about there again, no business there, but they have nothing to do. And they decide, well, hey, I can there. You want here, they want to be there to say they've been there. That is the story. All right, you took a
Mm-hmm.
decision because I understand that given the ruckus outside, because even before that, the police turned up on Middle Street, perhaps with an intention to secure the area, but what I saw there, they weren't securing the area. They stand across the road, people were allowed to pass freely, even the
Mm-hmm.
journalists telling them, well, why are you allowing people to pass? They never took control of the area. I would have
Mm-hmm.
thought that you would have put a block by East Street. You have a presence
Right.
there, and then you put the next block at Thomas Street. That old Middle Street area would have been sanitized, and you have it. They didn't do that. They did not do that.
People ended up doing that.
People coming in, and then what you have? They decided they are going to. Call. Remember, the first set of shooting that I heard started on Middle Street, because
Yeah.
apparently showing debris, they shoot
Right at the gate.
right there. All right. Then what happened?
Mhm.
Apparently, somebody decided, because it was reported that the doctors became fearful. So because of this crowd, they were afraid. So somebody decided that the compound must be cleared. So in comes or up comes the TSU ranks, right? And start shooting. And as you rightly pointed out, policemen who were there messaged me to say, look what's going on, I got to run for my life because I'm here and this TSU will turn up. Another section of the force turns up and without any warning, they just start to shoot while like that, right? All these things are totally against protocol. They start to shoot while. Now, I would have thought that and in shooting while and indiscriminately, without regards for patients, without regards for people who might be going there to get treatment, because all those could not have been people who had no legitimate business there. So they start to shoot while they start to shoot. And again, escalating the whole situation, because even when it comes to using, whether it's pellets, whether it's rubber bullets, there is a protocol. And what I saw there was totally against the protocol, just while shooting. And as you rightly pointed out, it would appear as though they had a very senior officer at the hospital there. But he was unaware of what is going on. Unaware. And my training is that in a situation that you have a senior man on the ground, all right, something is going on there. Somebody gonna relate to him. What is going on? Do you need assistance to clear these people as well? Apparently, that was not done. Somebody far removed from the scene decide that these people is a lot of incompetence. And let me say this before I not forget. The man in charge of the force, the commissioner of police, that they share all the blame, despite what they say. Despite what they say, he is in charge of the force. He was expected to give instructions, proper instructions, and to take command of the entire situation. It is evident that that was not done. And if that had been done, this chaos that ensued might have been prevented. Might have been prevented. It's a lot of incompetence. And let me say this.
Or deliberate doing. I will
I have been
continue to
pointing
add
out
that.
this a long time. I've been pointing out this a long time. I have the program, as you see the background there, speaking out, exposing corruption, incompetence, with along my colleague, Mr. Conway, as retired assistant commissioner of police. We have been pointing this out. You have people in position, including the position of the commissioner of police, who are not qualified, are not competent to be in these positions. But let me warn, is that what we saw there at West Demerara is Bank Essequibo in Region 3, with the failure of the police, what we saw there on Monday with all this craziness and so on, right? Given the command structure and some of these people you have in positions, if things are to erupt in other areas, you're going to get similar issues because you have a lot of inexperienced people. They pitchfork them into commander position. Look what happened at Linden. We had, and this is one of the sad things too. Just about 2 weeks before, you had the killing at Linden. You had 2 people get killed and so on. Wait, you're not going to use that as to train to say how things should be done? And nothing, and they have them there. I know that, especially in the election year, a lot of crowd, what they call it, public order training is done. Public order, where policemen are trained how to deal with public order issues. We have cases where you train jointly with the army, right? Where they call the box drill to make sure that we understand how to operate in situations such as we had last Monday. So it would appear that no training is done. Nobody is giving consideration to that. And I suspect that the reason why no training is done and proper consideration is not given to that is because of the political interference we're talking about. It's because of the political interference. The politicians have their hands in everything. And then when things go south, they try to walk back. Because even with the release of the postmortem report on the night of the 28th of April, who was the first person to tell us about the findings? The president. How the president getting involved with that?
With no professionals by his
No,
side.
he had the minister of health there, but I am saying that even with that, and then I tell you, referring to the police, guys, if you're gonna give a release and you're gonna be commissioner of police, they're telling you that the preliminary report is with the commissioner of police, but yet still they are the ones who commenting on it and not the commissioner of police. But even going back there, because And this too, how the thing wasn't properly managed, because they ought to have anticipated that when the result is given, people are going to become emotional. And therefore,
Mhm.
an arrangement ought to have been made for the pathologists to face the media to answer questions.
Correct.
Because what happened? The father, I think, or someone came and said, well, let's say drowned him. And
No
people
result.
just assumed
Mhm.
that, look, drunk didn't mean that she died in the pool. But if you had an opportunity to interface with the professionals, they might have been able to explain, well, that is the cause of death, but we don't know where she drowned, and we have to do that. May have assuaged some of the anxiety. But no,
Mhm.
then the president tonight telling you no sign of sexual assault and no forcible drowning,
Post it
all this
down
stuff.
in.
And they are the ones who politicize this thing. Why is the president making such a report with a lot of falsehood inside? Because even my understanding is, even now that they have reluctantly and belatedly released the preliminary PM report, it doesn't mention anything about whether it was forcible drowning or not.
Correct.
But
Correct.
the president said so. The
Mhm.
president said so. And then yesterday, Thursday, the vice president telling you about people politicizing the issue. That is what you have. And in all of this, lest we forget, in all of this, the commissioner of police, Clifton Ikin, the crime chief, Wendell Blanham, they have been silent. Silent. Can you imagine that? You have a major issue which has sparked national and international outrage. And the commissioner of police and the man in charge of crime in the Guyana Police Force have not said a single, have not interfaced. Let me give them that. God, they're going to say the talk. They have not started, they have not seen it fit to have a press conference to answer questions. And that is what leads to even more suspicion. So when they decided that they're going to have a meeting with the lawyers representing the interests of the family, according to what is reported by the lawyer who represents the lead lawyer, Commissioner couldn't answer any question. He can't even
Correct.
tell you who is the lead investigator. And then
Mhm.
when the lawyer came out and talked to the media, then they come out to the release sometime after, basically
Mhm.
attacking the lawyer and saying, also, you had an opportunity to tell something. The president said that he's going to ask the commissioner of police to assemble some team. The president said so very early in the game, and these people are
Mhm.
interacting with you almost 2 weeks after, right? And you can't tell them something as basic as that. Who is the lead investigator? Now, look, I say that if we have not come to the realization that the incompetence is so pervasive and that the man who sits at the helm of the chair at the force should go, I don't know what will cause that to happen, because he has
Mhm.
displayed, consistently displayed his incompetence, and that he's incapable of being in that very high and very important position.
Mhm. You didn't. We went into a lot there, but you didn't touch on one of the things that I mentioned. This now, after all of that happened on that day, we see a whole host of persons being charged in relation to terrorism. And one of the latest being the young lady, where we hear that a private conversation she had with somebody she supposedly trusted would have leaked that conversation to the public, whether true or a lie. And now she is being charged with terrorism, and I believe it's public inciting, etc. We talk about the statements that the president made. We talked about the commander in charge with his misleading information to the family, which seemed to be applied to have them removed from the scene. But we are seeing all of these people being charged, hundreds of people being charged under the Terrorism Act, supposedly. And the world is looking on and seeing that the police force is issuing on the page hundreds of persons that they are going to charge for terrorism in this country.
Well, no, that's well. I was about to say it's unfortunate, but it's clearly a misuse of the law. And let me say this: it is nearsighted. Because as you pointed out, that thing is all over the world, that you have all of these terrorists in Guyana. First of all, the acts committed by those persons, and I'm not condoning lawlessness. Because
Mhm.
they're going to jump. I am not condoning lawlessness. I am saying that people who behave, if they light road, light fires on the road, and even looting, that is not
Mhm.
terrorism. So
Mhm.
the Attorney General tried to defend that it is not terrorism, right? It is not, by any stretch of imagination, can be described as terrorism. Now,
Mhm.
so all right, I agree. People who are there should be arrested and charged. Yeah, you commit whatever act, you get righteous behavior, and all, those things are catered for under the law. They are catered for under the law. Acts like that, definitely not terrorism. Then the matter you mentioned there now, and these people are charged and remanded, and
Mhm.
some people have proclaimed their innocence. And one
Uh-huh.
would expect a lot of people to say they're innocent, but I think any evidence emerged to show that some of the people who are just around, they weren't
Yeah.
involved in any act of terrorism.
Mhm.
People tell you too that even the driver of the father of this child that died, somebody
Yes.
came up, took his picture, and then the next thing, a wanted bulletin with his
Mhm.
photograph is issued. It's his wildness. Then we saw this. I listened to this tape from this assistant nurse or whatever our designation is, telling you this story and so on. And I listened to this thing, but immediately I was a bit cautious. I never shared it because I said, look, some things are adding up. I need to be more discerning and get more evidence. All right.
Mhm.
This woman had a private conversation with someone. During the course of the conversation, she even mentioned that, look,
Mhm.
hope you're not
I want
recording me, right?
to.
So it was clear the intent was never to have this thing recorded in the first instance and be made public. All right, she's trying to impress somebody. I guess the person with whom she was having the conversation. She's trying to impress them. Now, how that amounts to inciting terrorism? She
Correct.
said, she said she was there and she saw things and she said things which it would appear that she did not see. How is it that that is inciting terrorism? I don't know. And you know the sad thing about this? That woman passed through court yesterday. She's remanded.
Mhm.
Remanded. The first issue I had with the whole matter was the fact that a wanted bulletin was issued for her. And I'm
Mhm.
saying, I sure she works at the ministry. They must have the address. They must have other information. They got that telephone contact. It would appear that no one attempted to contact her and say, well, we want you at the station. Come, let me ask you a few questions. Wanted bulletin, which has been
Mhm.
terribly misused. And only certain type of people they issue wanted bulletin for. Only
Mhm.
certain type. Check the records. You're going to see wanted bulletin. All right, the lady turns herself in. And to face a charge of inciting terrorism. That is what you have, right? At no stage, what are the elements I explained in my program? In order to commit a crime, there must be two elements. You have to have the guilty act and you have to have the guilty mind, the state of mind. They call it the actus reus and they call it the mens rea. The act was there, yes, she said something, but she said something in private, in
Mhm.
private. And then the person to whom she spoke apparently released this thing in public. So how is she to be blamed? How
Mhm.
is she to be blamed? How is it that she is inciting terrorism? The only body
Mhm.
she can say that she may have incited is the person to whom she spoke.
Correct.
Because that's the only body she spoke with. But you see, this
That's
is
not the public.
a lot of gaslighting. So that is why we try to come on speaking out and explain these things to the members of the public. She was wrong to tell a lie. But if you're going to charge someone with inciting terrorism for telling a lie, then the vice president got to face the court every week. And
Mhm.
others have to face the court every week. Others who are
Mhm.
not immune from the prosecution because they tell lots of lies. I have evidence of the Prime Minister, Mark Phillips, telling lies. And so on.
Mhm.
You tell people tell lie. People for whatever reason, as we say, she wanted to big up herself for whatever reason. But certainly that cannot amount to inciting terrorism. So let's see where that will go. I hope that she has proper legal representation, and it should not be only left to legal representation, but these things, the human rights body and all those people got to speak out against these things. And again, I say,
Mhm.
you cited, you talking about tourism, you talking about this fastest growing economy. And when you're going to open the paper, or when anybody doing the research in Guyana, you're going to see Guyana as all of these dozens and scores of terrorists. You think that's going to
Mhm.
encourage people to come, right?
Mhm.
But they just want to. And finally, on this, this is clearly designed to intimidate people. That is the only reason they can bring in terrorism charge in matters like these, is because they want to intimidate other people. If you come out and you protest, if you stand up, and even if you want to call it peaceful, we can say you're inciting terrorism. So you better don't come out. That is the purpose of a charge like this.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I believe these charges that we're seeing, it's to ensure that persons are afraid to speak the truth or afraid to come up and say something different from what the government is saying in these situations. We are basically out of time, but I want one other, my last thing that I want us to touch on. Um, with the same issue of seeing these wanted bulletins, we saw in the initial stage that a lot of things, or I should say, what we see sometimes is that the police and government, because they sit parallel to each other, when certain things happen, the CTV cameras that we have all across the country, they're not working. But we saw in seconds or in a couple of like an hour change that after all these things were happening on the evening, after the Monday evening into Tuesday, that all these persons' pictures were put up from what is said to be CCTV footage that the government has. And then I want from that, the vice president's press conference yesterday, not yesterday, on Thursday, it is noted that he said that he will be ensuring that cameras are put at every street corner, everywhere. And there are a few things that go parallel to this that I want persons to note, and I want to hear your opinion on it. You have in one breath the president is saying all sorts of things that amount to the suppression of freedom of speech, in my view, when he had that dinner, that luncheon or whatever it was with the so-called press, because many notable journalists were absent from that event, but we heard some of his rantings, as I would put it, on the issue that, with the VP now saying what they will do with cameras and what we saw them using the cameras to do with all of these terrorist charge, and understanding the capability of the cameras that are around the town, I beg to wonder or ask the question, are we arriving at a point where this may be seen as an excess in surveillance by the government, and especially a government who seems to only use these cameras at certain times, as we are now in an election year? What is your thought on that?
Well, as they say, George Orwell, Big Brother. It's Big Brother. They're gonna watch you everywhere you go, and then they're gonna be selective, very, very selective in terms of one, where those cameras are put, and one, the type of images they garner from the camera. But I believe in many cases, and this is where the human rights people again should come in, might very well be cases of invasion of privacy, right? It
Mm,
might very well be a case where, and these things have to be taken perhaps to the international community. Nothing wrong, I would think, in getting speed cameras and all of these type of things. Yeah, speed cameras operate in other jurisdictions, but then they have proper rules governing these things. But in Guyana, where the politicians are involved in almost everything, one can very well see these cameras being used to attack and to go after people who are perceived to be anti-government. That is the
mhm,
worrying thing. So you talk about freedom of assembly, freedom of movement, freedom of speech. Next thing you know, they got thing picking up your conversation and all this type of thing. It is very, very worrying. Very, very worrying. Because it's not a case where you're operating in a system where you have proper checks and balances. Those things don't exist. Checks and balances in Guyana, the way it ought to be, don't exist. There's a blurring of lines between the politicians, between the law enforcement agencies, between the people who, the lawmakers. There's a blurring. And therefore, in that context, it is very worrying when you hear they're boasting. I heard the Prime Minister boasted about safe city. We have safe city cameras and all this everything. They got cameras, and when some people commit crime, they can't see anything. They're working. Like, for example, we talk about the hotel where this girl disappeared. Cameras are there. They're not working. And then the cameras that they added the regional division office, because what they are saying, they are saying, because of lack of proper checks and balances, they claim that the wrong image was released to the public about this red and black car. So it is a worrying thing. And I think those who are looking into human rights and all of those things should deal with it, should make their voices heard early about the potential to invade privacy and to violate people's constitutional rights.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Slow. It is always a privilege to have you on this program. I will allow you another minute or so. If there is anything that we didn't touch that you feel that the Guyanese and persons listening on this platform need to hear before we close this program on these issues or any other issue.
Thank you for the opportunity again for being on your program. I don't think we touched on the investigation. I just like to, in closing, saying that people have called for international bodies to investigate this matter because we don't have confidence in the Guyana Police Force to properly investigate this matter. And it's not me saying so as a former policeman who Jagdi on them say I've asked to grind. It's not about having asked to grind. The Guyana Police Force now lacks the necessary credibility to investigate this and other serious matters. And I have said, and I'm saying it again for this audience, that even if they were to do the most professional of investigation, the image is bad. So even if they do the most professional of investigations, people are going to question it. And that is what you want to eliminate. And the move by the government to acquire some individual, some retiree from Canada to come to, they say, assist the police with the investigation, that will not work. That is not going to lay. I saw the lawyers representing the family say they reject that out of hand. I too. Because when you talk about an investigation of this matter, you need an organization with all the necessary forensic and other support. I don't know what support an individual can get. And I want to leave by saying, social media, Google, and these things are a fantastic thing because they put out that this man had such a stellar service and how much more than that sort of thing. What I have found so far, and I'm going to research it further because the people in Canada are telling me this man was a use of force specialist. A use of force specialist. There are no homicide specialist. I don't know him, but that is what is there. And we're going to continue to look because, again, I say that the only way people are going to be satisfied, you have to get one of the reputable agencies, FBI, Scotland Yard, Riot, Canadian Mounted Police, not some retiree from those organizations, because you want, when the people come, they must come with the support of the organization behind them. So if they want forensic examination, they want everything they can call back, and they can get that. So let's see, and let me say this. It appears as though, because there's all the same, Vice President, Prime Minister, the President, they want to bring closure to this. They're using that word frequently. They want to bring closure. I mean, the closure that they want, as far as I see, is to have this body buried. And once the child is buried, then they anticipate or they figure that within a short time thereafter,
normal.
they're going to go back to normal. That is the closure that they are talking about. But if you really truly want closure into this matter, bring in one of these international agencies. I'm sure they know to do it. write to the U.S. ambassador, write to the Canadian High Commissioner, write to the and say, look, because they are following, I'm sure they're aware what's going on. We need your help in this matter. The president did say that he will leave no stone unturned and they will spend all the resources necessary to uncover what went on. So then invite them to come. Invite them. Money should not be an issue.
Correct. Thank you once again, Mr. Paul Slow, for giving what I believe is your expert views on these matters that we discussed today. And I want to remind the persons viewing that at this stage, the only thing that will help to bring justice is for a thorough and proper investigation by an international agency who is accountable to somebody else and not someone who the government is going to pay some money to investigate. Because here again, what we will be looking at, that person has nobody to report to. There is no, they'll be relying on the same resources that the government has, and we can't afford that right now. We are saying that this case cannot go down the way the Henry boys, the Harris things, the boys from Linden, Peter, and aka Dan, I don't remember, Mr. Fudgeney, and so many other, but Mr. Boston, Mr. Bacchus. We can call names for probably hours on this show to talk about all of the persons that this government at some point promised justice. And to this day, they have not seen that justice. We are saying, as citizens, as persons looking on from near and far, that Adriana Young must get justice. And whatever it takes to ensure that she gets justice, this government must do. And if it means writing the US, if it means writing the UK, if it means writing the Canadian government, they are free to do so. And let them do so and show that they are really concerned about this matter coming to an end with the truth and not with cover ups and lies that we can see plainly in our face. We will continue to keep you informed on this matter. We will continue to call for the justice of Adriana Young, for her family, for this nation, and for every other person who has lost their life, for every other person whose blood was lost in this country and it's crying out right now for justice. And as we push forward with that, I am calling on all my viewers again. Whenever the next election is called, we have a responsibility to this nation, to our children and their children, and the future of this country to ensure that we have a government that is for the people, that will put the people first, and ensure that in any form and any situation that ever arises like this or even smaller, that justice is served. So I want to end by saying, if Guyana is to get better, if Guyana is to grow, the PPP must go. I want to thank you for joining Facing the Nation today. Do have a great afternoon.